American Steam Railroad here. We're here at the B&O Roundhouse with the restoration of 2100 to debut as the American Freedom Train 250 to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country.
And we've had a great response to our inquiry for viewers to ask questions, which Gordon and I are going to be answering for you here today.
We're going to review some of the questions and inquiries we've had for the American Freedom Train 250. Forrest, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Be glad to. Well, one of our first questions, and we had many people ask this, is where is the American Freedom Train 250, the 2100, going to run once the restoration is done? And everybody, while we're not ready to announce quite yet the railroads and locations, what we can say is 7 railroads have issued to us letters of intent for operation from 4 different states. And additionally, we are in contract negotiations right now with 2 of those railroads. So as soon as we have contracts signed and dates set, we'll gladly announce those schedules. But for now, I can gladly say 7 different railroads have already been in contact with us and issued letters of intent. Now, another question that had a variety of commenters was, will there be a full American Freedom Train? Well, for this one, everybody, while it would be wonderful to do that, to do a full Freedom Train like was done back in the mid-70s would be tens of millions of dollars. So when we announced the American Freedom Train 250, our intention was we will provide the locomotive, i.e. the 2100, of course, painted and dressed up, and then take it to host railroads and pull whatever train they put behind us. So Gordon, what question do we have next?
All right, let's continue on. Sam Painter posed a question, what are some of the differences that FMW is implementing for our conversion onto oil? First off, they properly designed an oil pan that has air vents coming in the side, which are already cut. We'll be installing and welding those up very shortly. Also, on the front end, the design there for the blast nozzle going up into the petticoat is being looked at very closely to create the proper draft coming through the boiler. Next question is from Eric Capuzza regarding the qualifications for anyone on our operating crew and our restoration crew. Let's talk first about a restoration crew. We've been meeting very regularly on Saturdays and some of the weekdays when we have steam contractors that are available to come in. We have no qualifications or requirements for that crew coming in the door. They do have to go through a few procedures once they are here, and that includes a safety training for both the Roundhouse, ourselves, and our property here at CSX. We also have them go through an orientation of what is here, and we have the ability to teach them how to use various tools and techniques that are being used on the restoration. On the operating crew side, we will carry anywhere from 5 to 25 people along with us on our operating crew that are support individuals. We need oilers, people to grease the locomotive, clean it, polish it, have people greeting the public that has come to look at the locomotive, people that provide descriptions or tours of the operation. You need to be a certified engineer according to the FRA, and we'll have to be steam qualified on those positions. An engineer, fireman, and conductor.
Now this question comes from David Crosby, and this one is, who owns the 2100? Well, David, it is owned by a businessman that pretty much is behind the scenes. He's not a railroader per se. It's not a name that people would recognize in, of course, railway or railroad preservation at all. When you have a locomotive that's leased, whether it's from a municipality like the 4449 or from a museum like 2716, really it's all about the relationships that you build. That is the key critical part. And as long as that is kept in a good positive frame and healthy, then there's wonderful opportunities there for the locomotive to run and be utilized and enjoyed by all. Well, our next question comes from Jenny Callan, who many of you probably already know due to all the wonderful postings she does about railway preservation. And Jenny's question is, where do you plan on doing your test runs? Well, excellent question, Jenny. One of the nice things here where we're at the Midwest Railway Preservation Society, we do have approximately 1/2 mile of track for us to do our initial test runs on, which of course will be at very low speeds, pretty much walking speeds, as we make sure nothing is binding up and everything everything's good and snug and tight. And then we are talking to some other railroads to be able to go and then put some tonnage behind the locomotive and run at some higher speeds. And once we have those contracts established, we'll definitely be making some announcements. But so far, the railroads we've talked to are very open to this and said when the time draws near, let us know, and it shouldn't be a problem to be able to do some test runs on our lines.
We had a number of commenters inquire about whether there will be PTC installed on the locomotive. PTC is positive train control. At this point in time, we do not have any plans to do that. One of our considerations about PTC is that the areas we will be operating, PTC is not going to be a requirement on those particular rails. When we transport it, we will have a diesel leading the way, and obviously that diesel locomotive will have to have PTC on it. Bill Drotar Jr. posed the question about our whistle. What whistle will be used on the Reading 2100 and the American Freedom Train 250? The plans are to use our Rizzoli Locomotive Works Reading 6-chime replica. An individual and contributor donated the money to have this built, and we will be using it on the locomotive.
Well, our next question comes from Evan Franzen, and he asked, what other changes are going to come to the AFT 250 as opposed to how the American Freedom Train looked with the 2101? Now, we want to, of course, historically pay homage to what was done in the past as closely as possible, but there are going to be some subtle changes. One is, of course, the number. It'll be 250, celebrating our 250th anniversary. Another one, though, is going to be the shades of the red, white, and blue. Originally, while Pepsi was one of the sponsors, the Pepsi colors and shades were used in the Freedom Train paint scheme. We are going to be doing, though, a little deeper and a little richer coloring, and we've actually picked Ford car colors. Now, the other changes that you'll see is, of course, naturally the oil bunker and the tender. And then under the cab, there are going to be a few changes because we don't need the stoker motor, but we're going to have some additional plumbing and valving there. And while we do have the original booster for 2100 again, it needs restored, and we won't have time to be able to do that. So the 2100 will not have a booster on the trailing truck. The white wall tires on the drivers are also going to be carried over to the pilot wheels. But everything else from the Eagle to the off-center headlight a little bit, those will all be there. Now, one of the other questions we get asked as well, and this one came from Dylan Trin, once the AFT 250 is completed, will it be returned to the Reading Freight livery? And the answer to that question is yes, at some point. Now, we don't know exactly when that point is because we still may be under contract, as railroads may still want the AFT 250 in the red, white, and blue color to come visit their railroad even after 2026. It is possible that a railroad or a private individual may come to us and want a different scheme for a short period of time. However, a check would have to be written because a paint job is about $35,000. So that's not something that we can absorb in our day-to-day budget. At some point when we are done with these other schemes, yes, the 2100 will be put back to her Reading Freight livery. So we look forward to doing all those projects as well.
Can we fit the locomotive and tender into the roundhouse assembled as an operational unit? The answer to that is no, unfortunately. There's not enough length in the building to get the tender and the locomotive in at the same time. Although we will have to do some servicing on an annual basis, we need to separate the locomotive and the tender. We will be storing the locomotive indoors, especially during the winter months when we're doing our routine maintenance. Hamish Jackson posed a very interesting question, that is, does the tender have a ground fill feature on it, and will we be installing it on the tender? At this time, we'll be using a hydrant fill it from the side, either from groundwater or a tanker. It'll just be through hoses to connections on the side of the tender. Forrest, let's talk a little bit about, will 2100 ever be converted back to coal?
Well, that's a very good question because, as you know, here not too long ago, American Steam Railroad made the decision to convert the 2100 to oil. It is something that for a period of about 18 months, we actually evaluated the costs of running on coal and then disposing of the ash, and also having all the storage containers that would be needed, like gondola cars, to haul the coal and store the ash, and front end loaders and conveyors. Our costs were going to go up about $2,000 for every 100 miles we operated. We had talked to many different tourist railroads across the country, so that way we could evaluate everything over this period of time. Some of the railroads that we are talking to, in fact one we're into contract negotiations with, made it pretty abundantly clear they wanted the locomotive burning oil, or we may not be operating at that location. So with regard to that, it became very evident that to have a financially viable operation for 15 plus years, it was not going to be doable burning coal as a traveling locomotive.
As a side note, we are storing all the coal parts that we took off the locomotive. We'll have the stoker and its systems, the drive motors. We have grates and holding racks for the grates in the firebox. So should the opportunity or necessity ever come about, we will have the parts to put it back to a coal burner, although that is not anywhere in the near future plans.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for your interest and your questions. We were glad to answer them for you. And now we'll go ahead and continue on with our June 2024 progress update. Well, everybody, we're here beside the firebox, and as you can see, we're making excellent progress with regard to the oil pan construction. You can see that the bottom and the sides and the tie-in to the mud ring here have been completed, as well as the shelf in the front where the burner is actually going to sit. The next process that'll be happening is there will be a series of holes cut in these side pieces here, these angled side pieces, for these oxygen inlet holes. And this will ensure that the fire has all the oxygen it needs, but also the air is disrupted. So the flame coming out of the burner turns into a fireball and equally heats the thermic siphons and the side and the top and the back of the firebox, because equal heat is important. And this is where the collaboration between FMW for the engineering services and our contractors, Zach Hall and Jason Johnson, all working together to ensure that we not only have the optimum performance out of the firebox, but also efficiency. I think it's one of the very exciting times for everyone to see what a T1 is going to be capable of doing while burning oil. Well, everybody, we're up here at the front of the locomotive, and in the smoke box is a device called the blast nozzle. And as the steam is being ejected out of the cylinders, it comes up through this nozzle and then goes into the petticoat, which is below the smokestack, before the steam is ejected out along with the smoke out the smokestack at the top. And this blast nozzle here is designed for a coal burning locomotive. This will be re-engineered to do the proper draft for oil burning and get the optimum power and efficiency out of the 2100 as she's burning oil. Well, everybody, we're up here in the cab, and as you can see, the back head now has been completely primered and painted. The product that we use is called Thermalux. It's from a company called Dampney, and it is specifically for boiler applications. So with 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of paint, we have the back head all ready for us to go ahead and start to reassemble some other items onto it. Now, other painting projects that we have been working on is the oil bunker, which is virtually now complete except for the very top, as well as where the 4 stands are. So we'll be picking the oil bunker up here, setting it down on some wood cribbing, and take care of those 4 spots where the stands were, and then again painting the very top after we have put it into the tender. And the other project we have been working on with regard to paint is the old coal bunker, where the oil bunker will now be placed back in. We have been wire wheeling that to remove any debris, loose paint, and of course any rust, which we are then primering it and then applying the paint. And after that, we'll be putting the brackets back in to hold the wood that is going to be the supporting buffer, if you will, between the 2 metal surfaces. And once that is then all done and painted, we'll be ready to get the oil bunker placed back inside. And everybody, it's always an exciting time when you get to put parts back onto the locomotive, such as the air tank brackets here. There are a total of 6 of them for the 3 air tanks. We did have to replace a few of the studs, so that is why we took them off and cleaned and painted them. And they're now back on the locomotive, ready for air tanks to be mounted back once again. Well, everybody, here at American Steam Railroad this Saturday, instead of a work session, we like to from time to time have some team building activities and just a general day of enjoyment for the members here that work on the locomotive. So we are here at the Western PA Model Railroad Museum in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, which is a 4,000 square foot model railroad that depicts the trains that operated from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania down to Cumberland, Maryland. So again, it's just one of the things we like to do here at American Steam, is to have a little bit of enjoyment as well, and take a look around at this impressive model railroad, which is open to the public mid-November to mid-January every year.
From American Steam Railroad, we would like to thank all our contractors, contributors, volunteers, and Midwest Railroad Preservation Society for all their cooperation and assistance over the past month or two.
And everybody, please visit our website at www.americansteamrailroad.org, where you can shop online for great hats, t-shirts, pins, and don't forget about our $21,000 raffle. We still have tickets available, or make a donation or join. And the faster we can get that money raised and have our volunteers here performing all the work and our contractors coming, we can get this locomotive on the rails for all of us to enjoy as quickly as possible. Thank you.